Bitcoin itself cannot be hacked. I mean, this is genius code, incredible amounts of numbers. It's being attacked. People are attacking it every day, and it gets stronger every day.
Is Bitcoin fiat money?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's an entirely new paradigm here. It's a new way of looking at things. When they came up with the term fiat money, thousands of years or whenever it was, this was inconceivable. What this is. So you can call it whatever you want to call it, but it does things that money can't do. I mean, you can't build contracts with dollar bills or with South African rand.
When inevitable turns into imminent, supply disruptions, surging demand, and low prices are setting up this commodity for a major run higher. According to legendary investor Rick Rule, we have two options. Either the world sees chaos or the price of this metal rises. To learn more, visit futuremoneytrends.com/u.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in to crushthestreet.com. I'm joined today with Adam Meister of disruptmeister.com, and we are going to be discussing Bitcoin, something that is absolutely hot right now. We've been covering it here a lot lately at Crush the Street, and he's going to break down some of the intricacies and kind of give us his story too as to why he believes in Bitcoin and, explaining it to a lot of people who are still very skeptical. Adam, you are saying, I'm looking at your bio here, buy and hold and do not sell until at least July 1st, 2020. You got quite the story here. I want to start this conversation off with, what got you into Bitcoin and why are you so excited about it?
Well, first off, Kenneth, thanks for having me on today, and thanks for having so many Bitcoin-related shows on lately. You are helping the world here, and there are so many finance guys out there who ignore Bitcoin, but you are doing a great job. What got me into Bitcoin was back in 2012 on all of these libertarian type of sites that I frequent. I started hearing about it, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool stuff. This is outside the box money, and I've always been into technology and stuff, and I'm recently, or starting around 2012 and 2011, I started not enjoying the government controlling every aspect of my life. So I'm like, oh, money that's not controlled by the government, that's technologically awesome. I've got to find out more about this. Unfortunately, I didn't purchase it in 2012. I didn't start buying until late 2013 when Coinbase.com opened, which made it very easy for Americans to purchase Bitcoin. But from then on, when I started to purchase in 2013 and then the price dropped, I even got more interested in it because I had the belief that it will return, that, this is, we have our ups and our downs. And if you think long term, if you really believe in this, and you can tell I'm passionately speaking about it, from the start, I really believe this is the future. So when it was around $200, I was buying, and I'm happy with the amount of Bitcoin that I have. At the same time, now Bitcoin's around $900 as we record today, and I still think it's cheap. I still think that it's a buying opportunity, and that you have to be patient. You have to be a long-term thinker here. That you mentioned the year 2020 and July 1st, 2020. That is the next Bitcoin halving day. So I put that as a point in the future that people can look to and just hold on to their Bitcoin, because it's hard for people to hold on to their Bitcoin. They get very tempted. They get very tempted to maybe panicked and put it into Ponzi schemes and all sorts of things. People just have to stay focused on something. So I've set a date in the future, July 1st, 2020. Just everyone focus on that date. You'll be very happy when it occurs.
Adam, one of my recent guests called Bitcoin fiat money. And that's a big question right now. And, I sat back and I was thinking about it. Is Bitcoin really backed by something? And the knee-jerk reaction is to say, no, it isn't. But we're in a whole new age. I mean, that's like saying email isn't real mail. There's just a whole unprecedented, direction we are going with technology. And, I would like someone like yourself to be able to break that question down. Is Bitcoin fiat money?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's an entirely new paradigm here. It's a new way of looking at things. When they came up with the term fiat money, thousands of years or whenever it was, this was inconceivable what this is. So you can call it whatever you want to call it, but it does things that money can't do. I mean, you can't build contracts with dollar bills or with South African rand. It is backed by code. I mean, that's the way I think of it. It's backed by technology. You don't need. There is no government saying this is money. It is the very definition of this new concept of money, I believe. I mean, we're getting into philosophical type of nebulous talk here. I mean, we're using an old term to define something that we don't have words to even properly define yet.
Sure. Adam, explain to people then how a coin is created. Again, there's still a lot of people who don't understand it. And to be honest, I don't have a full grasp, at least where I want to be in terms of Bitcoin. And, explain how a Bitcoin is created and that there is actual effort that goes in to make it worth something.
Yeah, well, it's a bunch of big computers spending using a lot of electricity to solve mathematical formulas. It's called proof of work, and that this proves that these Bitcoin exist. It is a concept that even I am not a technical guy. I don't fully understand all of that either, but I understand that smart people very much understand it, like Andreas Antonopoulos, Trace Mayer. These are people to look up, and they can do a great job of explaining it to guys like us who are not technical geniuses or anything like that. But it's a proof of work concept. It's using real electricity. It's using real computers. It's people different mining. They call it mining of the Bitcoin. Miners competing against each other to get these rewards, to earn more Bitcoin in order to mine more Bitcoin. So again, I can't give the greatest explanation in the world. I'm sure you'll have guys say, well, this guy's not technical. But hey, what I do, I believe the people out there who are technical geniuses, who are very impressed by all this. I'm very impressed by all of it. So there's my layman's answer, I guess.
Sure. No, and I appreciate that. I appreciate your honesty too. And it does say a lot when you do have credible people that are extremely smart, saying, not just having a knee-jerk reaction that says, oh, Bitcoin and whatever, and write it off. Like, these are real credible people that have looked into this in detail and said, no, this is legit. And, on that vein, I want to ask you about the concern of hacking. That's another area where people say, hey, I don't know if Bitcoin can be hacked, or the government shutting it down, or the government shutting down the internet and then crashing Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on some of these areas where people or pundits will say, I don't like Bitcoin. I'd rather hold gold in my hand?
Oh, wow. This is a great question, because we're living in this time of the nebulous term hacking. What is hacking? Bitcoin itself cannot be hacked. I mean, this is genius code, incredible amounts of numbers. It's being attacked. People are attacking it every day, and it gets stronger every day. When we hear the term hacking, though, exchanges where you buy and sell Bitcoin, those can be hacked. So when they get hacked, and they have been hacked, these are centralized, because Bitcoin is decentralized. It's not one company controlling it. It's a bunch of computers all over the world, different miners, different people holding it, et cetera, et cetera. An exchange is one central location that has a bunch of Bitcoin. Of course, that can be hacked. So when that gets hacked, that puts out a bad name for Bitcoin. And the pundits out there who do not understand decentralization and blockchain and all this, they think Bitcoin has been hacked. So they just simply throw around the term Bitcoin has been hacked when some exchange has been hacked. Now, just don't keep your Bitcoin at an exchange. There's your answer right there. I'm a guy who believes in this, something called the Bitcoin Trezor, which is a storage device. And I actually consult people and help them set up their Bitcoin Trezor. You can actually email me at adam@trezorhelp.com if you want help with your Bitcoin Trezor. And keep it. You have to know your private key. You have to know your private Bitcoin address to really control your Bitcoin. There's a public Bitcoin address and then there's a private Bitcoin address. And if you are not in control of that private address, if some exchange has that private address, someone can steal that private address. I mean, a hacker, a real hacker can do that. So in terms of having Bitcoin in your hand, compared to gold, if you have your private key, if you have your private address stored on your storage device, on your offline Bitcoin Trezor, for example, which I mentioned before, then yeah, it's sort of in your hand. You're holding this device that has your private key on it, which is just a long series of numbers. And it's just like holding gold. Now, of course, if Coinbase.com is holding your Bitcoin, well, then it's just like having your gold in a vault somewhere or your cash at the bank somewhere. Something could happen. You're not there. Someone could break into the gold vault. Someone could break into the bank. So and as for the internet going down, I mean, all these things you bring up are things that pundits and the news media continually harp on and make people scared. And I'm here to tell people not to be scared. If the internet goes down, the internet will come back up again. If the internet does not come back up again, then the world is over, basically. We'll all starve to death, and you'll have a lot of other things to worry about besides Bitcoin. So you think of it that way. At the same time, if you have your private key, you can give someone else your private key, and then they're in control of your Bitcoin. So if the internet was down for a day, if you were in some developing nation and you encountered an emergency where you had to give someone Bitcoin suddenly, you could just hand them your private key and then they would be satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, all interesting points. And, again, just a further wrapping of my mind around the whole Bitcoin understanding. Because, again, this is so revolutionary. And a lot of people are wondering now that the government might be issuing its own digital currency. Do you believe and are you concerned that Bitcoin is just the first mover of what the government will bring into the picture in terms of digital currencies?
Well, this is a great question. Great question. I think it's great that if governments want to do something like that, if governments want to have their own blockchain that they centrally control. It would be one entity controlling it. It would not be decentralized. It is like the intranet compared to the internet. It's like a private company's intranet. Back in the 90s, everyone thought the intranet, all these companies are going to create their own private internets, these intranets. They're going to be great. But they weren't great. People preferred to be on the internet where you could get anything instead of being on your company's intranet where they told you what to look at. So if everyone gets, in the United States, for example, if they come up with the dollar coin, let's say, and force everyone, there are no more dollar bills in existence. Everyone has to use this blockchain of the United States government. Well, some people will just follow blindly, and the government will track every single financial transaction they have, which will be terrible for them. But other people will be like, this is terrible. I'll just use Bitcoin now. It will get more people onto Bitcoin, I believe. If countries try to create their own centralized blockchain currencies, people will not want to be controlled, and it will force them to look into the free market, which is Bitcoin, which is decentralized. So I encourage countries to do so, to experiment. Because it also is good publicity for cryptocurrencies, for Bitcoin, for the other cryptocurrencies that are out there. It'll just increase the knowledge, because right now the cryptocurrency ecosystem. It's very small. Not many people know about Bitcoin in the world, and most of the people have huge misconceptions about it. So if governments get involved, it will only increase the marketing of Bitcoin. And another thing I wanted to point out when we're talking about governments getting involved, they can't shut down Bitcoin. They can. I'm sure they tried a long time ago, and they see that it's a fool's game. What I foresee happening here is that since Bitcoin is a store of value, since Bitcoin does have value, just as governments purchase gold, the Chinese government purchases gold, there are going to be governments that start to purchase Bitcoin because they know their fiat currency is worthless and that it's just inflationary and they keep printing it, and Bitcoin is deflationary, and they want to have some value. They want to have some value in the bank just in case everything goes wrong in their country. So I would not be surprised. I would advise a smaller country, to secretly start buying as much Bitcoin as possible and then announce that they've done it once they're comfortable with the amount of Bitcoin that they have. And then there will be a war to get Bitcoin, a theoretical war. All of a sudden, all the other countries, they'll hear that one country has Bitcoin. They'll be like, well, I better get this too. I better be in on this. And the price will skyrocket. I really think and this is something I got from a guy named Vinny Lingham, who everyone should look up, is a great Bitcoin guy who is originally from South Africa, really smart, and he gave me that concept. So,
well, I wouldn't put it by any government to go ahead and do that. Obviously, we know countries are buying gold. Why wouldn't they do that with Bitcoin once they are a believer? And I'm sure many are believers. Even, I know one of Trump's picks was a big Bitcoin advocate here. And maybe that had something to do with some of the most recent price action, although, you might have more insight on that than I do. Adam, there's 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be issued. Give us the understanding, though, of how much is actually lost, the private keys and, that are just sitting on hard drives and landmines, and how much is out there really, and, how significant it is that only 21 million coins will ever be issued.
Yes. Well, only 21 million will ever be issued. There are right now 16 million have been issued, but the issuance is slowing down considerably because that means there's only 5 million to be issued over the next 100 years or so. So it's going to, every 4 years, there's a halving. It's cut in half how much is being produced and how much the miners are getting as a reward. And you mentioned about them being lost. Well, at first, remember, a lot were being produced and there was only a bunch of geeks, passing it around between each other. So people would get Bitcoin and they would just misplace their private keys. It would be lost. So we don't know how much Bitcoin has been lost, but estimates, I mean, 10% could be already lost. Who knows? I mean, it could be around a million. It could be around 100,000. I've heard all sorts of different numbers. It makes it more deflationary, actually, that some can never be used again, and it also makes some people kind of bitter that they lost their Bitcoin and didn't realize that this was going to happen. But it's also a lesson for everyone, to keep track of your Bitcoin. You can definitely lose it. There's a lot of it that's lost out there that will never be used. And eventually someone is going to figure out really how much has it moved in the last 30 years, let's say. And I think it'll be a good estimate on how much is probably never gonna move, and the people will be able to figure out that number, and it'll give people a better idea of the deflationary nature of the coin and everything. But it is interesting that people lost some. It's unfortunate.
Adam, you give some pretty exciting advice, and this was something you told me before the call here, and that was you tell people to own as much Bitcoin as they think they will need to become a millionaire. And I would presume that you are pretty bullish, to say the least, on where Bitcoin is going. So if you wouldn't mind, please tell us how bullish you are on Bitcoin and, your advice to people when owning it, even at these prices that are, only been seen a couple times now in history.
Yes, we are at a new point here where we've been over $800 for many days since December 20th. More days, I believe, than Bitcoin had ever been in over $800 for every single day before December 20th, 2016, since its existence. So we're in a new realm here, and that is very excited. I am very bullish on Bitcoin, as you say. I don't try to make insane predictions. Like, I don't like to say in 2021 Bitcoin is going to be worth $1 million. There are all these people who will say things like that. I'm not like that. I'm a guy who will be happy right now. There's some people saying by the end of the year Bitcoin will be between $2,000 and $3,000. I think that's awesome. I'll be happy if it's just $1,000 by then. What you referred to is people have to think in their head. They really have to think long term on this. When do I want to be a millionaire? And let me make a conservative estimate on what Bitcoin can really be based on factors, based on what I just discussed before. What happens if governments start buying it? What happens if everyone in China all of a sudden owns it? So for me, multiple thousands of dollars in the next decade is great. If it's in let's say, well, what year is it now? Okay, in 10 years, if it's $10,000 each, everyone's going to be in great shape that owns it now. I mean, that's not unrealistic. I just don't like to get people's hopes up. I just say, like, hey, right now it's $900. If you think it's going to be $1,000 by the end of the year, which I definitely do, you should be buying now because it's going to be worth more. But again, I like to stress to people, like, so you think it's going to be worth $10,000 by 2021? Then there's no point in you selling it now. There's no point at all, because remember, when you buy and sell through Coinbase, let's say, which is the way Americans are basically getting their Bitcoin now, Coinbase works with the government. Coinbase is like a bank. They are going to report everything to the IRS. And there's been some controversy now, like, oh, how could they do that? Of course they're going to do it. They're regulated. So when you buy and sell Bitcoin, especially when the government, you're going to have to report. If you sell, you have to report your profit. Why get yourself into that situation now? Why even start worrying about that stuff? So don't panic. Think long term. Think, how you're going to become a millionaire because of this, and you won't sell. It's very important not to sell now.
Adam, and this is something that I've thought about. I mean, I'm very excited about Bitcoin, but the potential for an infinite amount of competitors to come onto the market is technically and theoretically there. So when Bitcoin does go to 10,000, 20, and 50, wouldn't that just open up the door for the demand to get diluted among all the other cryptocurrencies out there that are, some say are even better. Some are, the same or even better.
There are some that do more things, but do people really want all of those things in their cryptocurrency? All of these things could be adopted by Bitcoin too. There's a guy out there, Tone Vays, who says that the altcoins, which are all the other cryptocurrencies that already exist, there are like 700 others out there, that they're test nets for Bitcoin. Bitcoin dominates so much now. Of all the cryptocurrency out there, 86% of it is Bitcoin, and then the other 14% is 700 other cryptocurrencies. So if this is a free market, of course, people can create anything they want to, but now all the greatest developers are behind Bitcoin. That's what they're into right now. And the most focus by the financial world is on Bitcoin. Ethereum came out, and a lot of corporate people got behind it. That Ethereum is another cryptocurrency. And then they had a hard fork where Ethereum split into two different Ethereums. And this is a lesson for Bitcoin to learn to avoid a hard fork. And I'm not going to get into the technical details of what a hard fork is, but it was a lesson. It was a test net. and now Ethereum is not, its price is not what it once was before. And everyone wants to be the next Bitcoin. Everyone wants to start a cryptocurrency that starts out as 1 cent and then is worth 1,000 times more, 10,000 times more. So people who are creating some of these cryptocurrencies just want that. They're pump and dumpers. So you have that suspicion of anything that's new. But I'm such a firm believer in this mass adoption that we've already have of Bitcoin, of the people in the cryptocurrency space. The only thing I could foresee is if something went horribly wrong with Bitcoin, then actually, if something went horribly wrong with Bitcoin, it might just bring down all cryptocurrency. I don't know if another cryptocurrency would step up at that point. But again, the way Bitcoin does things might not be the super technologically awesomeness of another new cryptocurrency out there, but it is the way it is. It is 86% of the market now. People are, I don't want to use the word stuck in it, but that is the way right now, and I don't foresee it being overtaken by anyone. And people can judge for themselves, though. They can see the other cryptocurrency communities that are out there, and look up Litecoin and Dash and Monero. They all have interesting aspects. There's anonymous aspects to these coins. So look them up and decide for yourself, I guess.
Sure. Adam, so you've spent a lot of time in some different countries, and you've had Bitcoin experiences in these different countries. Obviously, my experiences here in the U.S., where we have relative stability, and I use that word in quotes, but with our money. But some other countries haven't been as fortunate, and I'm curious, what has your experience been in other countries in regards to Bitcoin?
Well, I pulled a Doug Casey. Everyone knows Doug Casey says that young people should go to Africa, and he specifically mentioned Zimbabwe. I went to Zimbabwe, and I wanted to go to that part of the world because of Doug Casey for a while, and I encountered someone on the internet who knew about me and my Bitcoin channel, and he invited me to speak at his Bitcoin conference in Zimbabwe. So I was like, better combine everything now. So I ended up down there in Southern Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, in South Africa and Namibia, and I got to see the cryptocurrency ecosystems down there. And obviously in Zimbabwe, I saw the bank lines firsthand and how broken the people are and financially, and how they will stand in line for $50 all day, and if they don't get their $50 from the cash machine, then they just sleep there and wait till the next day. And they all have blank looks on their faces. Wow. It's pretty amazing stuff. And these people they don't want to be in this system anymore. And so at the cryptocurrency, but they don't know the way out. They just don't know the way out. They need people, Bitcoin evangelists, coming to their country, spreading the word. So I did that. And at the Bitcoin conference in Harare, in Zimbabwe, in November, there were a lot of excited people about it, but they didn't have some basic knowledge of it. A lot of people in Africa, the only way they've heard about Bitcoin is through the MMM Ponzi scheme, which sort of involved Bitcoin. So there's a lot of clarification that needs to be done in these countries so people feel comfortable with Bitcoin, so they don't think it's part of some scam. But there's incredible potential in countries like Zimbabwe where they cannot send their money outside of the country. It's just the banking system does not allow it. So there is one Bitcoin exchange in Zimbabwe, and they sell their Bitcoin for quite a premium. It's like over $1,000 there now, I think, because people will pay a lot for it because they really need it to get their money out of the country. So the potential is huge. I repeat what Doug Casey says. If you're an American, go to these countries. And I will add on to this, if you are a Bitcoin Westerner, go down to these countries. There is an incredible thirst for something new like Bitcoin. And once one of these countries really picks up on it, and there is mass adoption in these countries of Bitcoin, it's going to make a huge difference for the people of these countries. They're going to become wealthier. It's going to make a huge difference for Bitcoin. But what I want to also point out is that a lot of people talk about theoretical things, how great Bitcoin is going to be for Africa. it's a long way off now. It's a long way off. We just can't talk the talk. We have to physically get on the ground in these countries and talk the talk to the people. Because theoretically, if we keep talking theoretically, Bitcoin is the next great frontier for Africa. Africa is the next great frontier for Bitcoin. It's just going to remain in theory forever. We've got to get there. I intend to return to Africa. There are people who want me to do a Bitcoin conference in Mozambique. I'd love to do that and make it totally different, outside the box type of Bitcoin conference where we get real people that need Bitcoin together with Westerners who can bring them Bitcoin and can employ them with Bitcoin. All sorts of things in my head, all sorts of opportunities that are there. But again, we have to go there to actually, realize these opportunities.
Wow. And it really is incredible that, in areas where they really are dealing with crisis, situations where they can't get their money, they can't move their money around the world. I mean, that's really where Bitcoin, shows its true value, the ability to transfer.
The other thing the thing I wanted to point out, I'm sorry to interrupt you. When I was in Mozambique, a major bank had closed recently and took everyone's money.
Wow.
These things are commonplace in these countries. But they can only keep their money in banks. So if they had a new option to where to store their value, they wouldn't have to worry about these second biggest banks in their countries just suddenly shutting down and taking all their money.
Adam, last question, and that is, Bitcoin is money. And this is something I think about, and I've heard a lot of people say this too, and it's too volatile. How do you keep your savings, money that you say want to use in 6 months, tied up in Bitcoin, with it moving, 10%, 20% in a very short period of time, when, you have some relative stability in fiat currencies, specifically the US dollar? I know that's a controversial statement, but the reality is, when it comes to Bitcoin, it moves a lot and very quickly. What would you say it would become money? When is it going to become more stable, where it actually acts like a store of value in the sense it's not volatile?
Yes, as a traditional store of value without this crazy volatility. When is that going to happen? Because right now, I foresee the volatility continuing into the foreseeable future, at least this year, next year. I mean, possibly, I would hope by 2019 or 2020 it calms down, but it still could be very volatile. So I would not advise someone to store their value for a 6-month period. Again, I'm a buy and hold guy. That's not buy and hold. That's store for 6 months and then sell at the end and hope you made that your value was maintained. That's a risk. There's too much volatility for that right now. So I don't advise doing something like that, a 6-month thing. You gotta think long term. But so I agree, in the traditional sense of money as a store of short-term value, it's not there yet. The volatility will continue. So that is why you must think long-term with this, because if you do pay $1,000 for it tomorrow, in 6 months it could be $800 again. It very much could. But I strongly believe it will be worth more in 2020 than on July 1st, 2020, the day of that Bitcoin halving, than it is today. So there's my honest answer.
And great closing thoughts right there. Adam Meister, everyone. Adam, if people want to learn more about you and, reach out to you and, go to your website, tell them a little bit about what they can expect to find.
Well, again, if you go to disruptmeister.com or just Google Adam Meister on YouTube, you're going to find my Bitcoin Meister YouTube channel. That's another name of mine, Adam the Bitcoin Meister. And I post a new Bitcoin video or a new cryptocurrency video every day, at least one. And it's a unique take on the price, on the future, on the companies involved in Bitcoin. It's highly energetic, like I am right now. And you can ask me questions, and that's where you can find me. And you can also email me at adam@trezorhelp.com if you have any questions about a Bitcoin Trezor or just any cryptocurrency type of questions. I love to interact with people through social media and email.
Well, Adam, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show with me today. It was a pleasure speaking with you. I really do appreciate it.
Kenneth, thanks you for having me on. It was great.